Iran's foreign minister has blamed Washington for the collapse of talks between the U.S. and North Korea. In a tweet, Mohammad Javad Zarif reminded the U.S. President Donald Trump that diplomacy cannot be achieved with the help of flip-flops, photo ops, and pageantries. And Zarif said that it took more than a decade for Iran and other signatories to the nuclear deal to hammer out every word of the agreement known as a Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the JCPOA. Second North Korean-U.S. summit unexpectedly broke down in Vietnam on Thursday. The two sides have provided conflicting accounts of what took place during the talks, raising questions about the future of the negotiations. And now we're joined for this news review by Mr. Jim W. Dean, managing editor from Veterans Today, joining us out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Jason Unruhe, political commentator out of Niagara Falls, Ontario. I'd like to welcome you both to the program. Hello, gentlemen. If I could start with you, Mr. Jim W. Dean, your thoughts on Mohammad Javad Zarif's assertions that Donald Trump is more looking to, for grandstanding than actually getting anything done in the second summit.
I think that's partially true in terms of grandstanding, because Trump starts grandstanding when he does Twitter in the morning, and he grandstands whenever he's within the public. But I think what's really going on here is Trump did not want to have a breakthrough at this time, because the Korea deal, settling it, he's going to save until it's a very important political time, probably with his re-election. He's under the gun. He doesn't have a lot of good cards to play, and the ones that he can control, like when to do a deal with North Korea, he needs to hold them for a rainy day when he's going to get the most out of them. And really, the strange thing here was that all along, everybody knew that if Trump was going to demand a complete denuclearization from Kim before he would do anything on the sanctions, that Kim would never agree to that. So that's just a way to basically say Kim was being obstinate. But all along, we expected that this would be, if it was a real negotiation, it would be set up as a step-by-step process. You destroy some stuff, we'll release some sanctions. And then we'll go to step 2, step 3, maybe 4 or 5 steps. And it didn't take long before Trump's plane even got back to Washington. Kim said right away he agreed to begin destroying his nuclear arsenal if Trump would agree to release some of the sanctions. So right away we have Trump disagreeing, and this is what happens when you don't have a third party or news entity sitting in on the negotiations that can tell the public what really happened.
And Jason, if I could swing it over to you, what was the point in Trump making this trip if he wasn't willing to, engage in give a little, get a little diplomacy here? He's saying that, the North Korea wants all sanctions lifted, which is, a lot different from what's coming out from Mr. Ri Yong-ho, of the North Korean foreign minister, says that we only wanted a few sanctions and we were willing to shut down a very big nuclear plant. Your thoughts, please.
Well, I think that the point is that the way that Donald Trump has done his quote-unquote negotiations thus far have not been negotiations whatsoever. They've been entirely bully tactics. The perfect example of this is the NAFTA agreement. There was no real agreement. There was no negotiation. Trump made demands, and you either met those demands or you were left out in the dust. And the same thing is being done with China right now. Either China is going to bend to the will of Trump, or the the tariffs are going to continue. This is the same thing that he did with the DPRK, because this is how Trump does his negotiations. He makes demands, other people either agree with them or they're simply removed. The problem is that what the United States wants is a denuclearized DPRK, and this is simply unreasonable. The DPRK knows very well that the United States has been threatening them for decades, has at times even threatened nuclear war against them. The DPRK has every right to defend itself and maintain an ability to do so. However, they were willing to make a concession in demolishing this one nuclear facility in exchange for sanctions relief. Essentially, the United States is holding all of the cards here. They control what can come in and out from the DPRK to a large degree, not 100%, but essentially they can try to cripple the DPRK's economy. It's not the other way around. And the typical tactic of Trump is to just make demands and that's it. The problem is that's not going to work in this situation. And I also feel that a big part of this was Donald Trump grandstanding for the election that's coming up in the United States quite soon. Trump likes to go out, have photo ops, etc., speak to his particular crowd, make bombastic statements, because this is how he reaches the public. And this was more a propaganda op than anything else. And we saw, as with the last meeting between the two men, essentially nothing at all came of it, because this was largely seemingly a public relations stunt rather than any attempt to negotiate, which we saw that Trump doesn't actually do.
And Mr. Jim W. Dean, to what level do you feel Donald Trump actually has the will or the authority or the flexibility to board a plane and go to Vietnam and actually hammer out any kind of negotiations with respect to the North denuclearization?
Well, I think he certainly could if he wanted to, and that was the plan of his deep state national security crowd that he's got back home in the White House with Mr. Bolton. But there's a silver lining in all of this. The movement toward peace is not dead, because relations between South Korea and North Korea have been moving along steadily all along. It was their improved relations when the U.S. was doing nothing. South Korea took the first step and started meeting with Kim. And they're way ahead of the U.S. in what they've been able to do. In the U.S., Trump did do something when he came back. He canceled 2 of the major military exercises with South Korea, and that was a big problem with Kim. He didn't even want to negotiate when the U.S. was holding major military operations with South Korea. So that was a little palliative for the showmanship that he put on when he got back. So while we're waiting, things are continuing to move in conditions, and they're talking about opening the big joint trade center, manufacturing center on the border. All of those steps take us closer and closer to an eventual deal.
And Jason, we have less than a minute left. I want to let you also answer that question. Is Donald Trump being uncompromising in these talks by choice?
I think that he is. That's just because that's his nature. That's the way he's done everything thus far. That's part of what he wrote in his book on the art of the deal. You make a demand and they either meet it or they don't. So I think that's just the way he does it. So it is deliberate on his part in that that's very much just the way that he behaves. The problem is that this is not business. This is geopolitics. And you cannot function it the same way as you can a business. Negotiations aren't the same here as they are at the boardroom table. These are international actors. These are states. These are much more than just simple private companies. And that's something that he either doesn't want to see or he just plain isn't seeing himself.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you both for joining us. Jim W. Dean out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Mr. Jason Unruhe out of Niagara Falls, Ontario. Thank you both sincerely. And that's it, viewers, for this segment of your news review. Thanks for joining us, and bye-bye for now.